What is going on, everyone? Today we are going to be tier ranking every single or majority of the MCU villains. I did a hero tier list ranking thing a couple days ago. I know I missed a decent amount of people. You know, when you're doing it, you forget some people. I don't know. The ones I wanted to talk about, I didn't really forget about. So, you know, just think of it like that. If I forget it, it probably means I didn't really care much about that character in general. I did forget Moon Knight and Shang-Chi, which are two that I actually really like, so whatever. Regardless, we're doing villains now. Like I said, I probably forgot a couple here and there, but these are just the main villains that I kind of felt like talking about today. Again, definitely a couple I missed. But some of these characters, just like on the heroes, some of them have been heroes at certain points, some of them are not completely villainous, but they are at some point in the series a villain. And this is MCU only. There are some characters here that, of course, exist in other MCU other Marvel property, but that's just because of the multiverse. So yeah, I'm just ranking it on it how they are in the MCU. This is movies and shows. Let's jump right into it. This is, you know, based on their character, the actor, and just everything about them. First things first, the Ironmonger, or you know, you can call him Obadiah, his real name. This is an interesting one because I think the character itself of Obadiah is a fantastic character in the first Iron Man, but I don't think that the suit of the Ironmonger, I don't know, something about big robotic suits that I just think are kind of boring, but it fits with Iron Man. Obviously, it definitely is a good contrast to his suit, and this the character itself that is just really well written of Obadiah. He was one of the better parts of the first Iron Man. Jeff Bridges did a fantastic job, so I'm gonna put him in A tier. A tier seems pretty good for him, I would say, but the only thing holding it back, I think, is like the design of his suit itself, and he's just not the same as a lot of the other S tier villains that we'll get to a little bit later. Next up, Abomination. Now, I really hope to see more of Abomination. I know we are. I think he's actually going to be in She-Hulk, or I think that's actually confirmed. Very excited to see more of Abomination, but in the Incredible Hulk movie, I don't think he was like that great compared to a lot of other villains. So I'm just going to throw him in C tier. Again, he could get a lot better. He also had a small appearance in Shang-Chi, which I thought was just interesting, but nothing that special. I think this is one that can definitely go up because I think the villain itself is a well-rounded villain. It's just right now I don't think he's that interesting. Whiplash is not as yeah, I'm gonna put him in D actually. I was gonna say not as terrible as people make it out to be, but I don't know. Maybe it would be top of D or like bottom of C. Maybe I'll put him in bottom of C because I actually think there are some cool ideas there. He's just not really like a villain that has much depth. It's very one layered. He's just like, oh, I hate Tony Stark. I mean, a lot of villains like that, but this one is just the most one layered villain you'll get. He's just kind of cool though. That's the only reason I'm putting him in C instead of D, because I gotta admit, his little whips, they're kind of cool. That one action scene at the racetrack in Iron Man 2, I thought was kind of fun. And that's because he has an interesting design to him. And the actor does a pretty damn good job with the role. But there's just no depth to his character. I think that's the biggest problem with him. He was obviously just being kind of led by Justin Hammer, who I'm going to put in B. He was definitely a lot better, but he definitely wasn't good enough to be on the same level of Obadiah in the first Iron Man, which I think Iron Man 2 had a lot of other issues that wasn't exactly the villains. I think the villains actually weren't terrible. So that's that for those Iron Man 2 villains. Red Skull from Captain America: The First Avenger. I think Red Skull looks awesome, and I think he has a cool presence to him, but I don't think his character is interesting enough to be an A tier, but I think B is good for that. Of course, we saw him again in Infinity War and Endgame, and it was a cool appearance, but I don't know, it wasn't necessarily enough to make me care much more for the villain, but I think he was a good first villain to have in that film. Definitely better than the previous Captain America adaptation from 1990. That was just god-awful. The makeup design too and everything is really cool. So I think Red Skull's a good villain. Loki, of course, we talked about him in the heroes ranking. He was an S tier hero. He is an S tier villain as well. I think he's much better as a villain in the Avengers though. I think in Thor he was just okay. But once you get into the Avengers, he becomes this guy who's just really obsessed with power, and he feels like he's larger than life. And I love the way he like tries to be like a king to people, and they're all just kind of looking at him like, you look ridiculous. And there's a lot of fun moments with him, and obviously his change over time is really impactful for his character, and I think that makes him even a better villain sometimes when you see how he goes from being a really big villain to becoming someone who's not a villain anymore as the series goes on. So he's really good. Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. This was an interesting one because, you know, it was the whole Mandarin twist that they did, and I'm still not crazy about how they handled that in that movie, but this villain himself, he kind of just, he's really cliche in a lot of ways. Again, it's another one of those I hate Tony Stark people. You know, Tony Stark did something to him in the past, and then now he's like, oh, I just want to get him. So it did kind of feel like we were getting a bit too many of those types of characters. I really love Iron Man 3, but I'm not sure if Aldrich was the part of it I really liked. So I'm actually going to put him down in C. I was not crazy about him. I think a lot of the things in Iron Man 3 that were amazing had nothing to do with the villain, which is opposite of a lot of other movies in the MCU. Some movies, it's like the villain is the best part of the movie, and that's like everything that's so good about it. But this was one of those cases where I actually don't think the villain was that good in Iron Man 3. We're gonna get our first D tier villain next, Malekith from Thor: The Dark World. I can't even really tell you much about this villain. I rewatched certain scenes recently. I haven't seen The Dark World in at least a couple of years, but I rewatched some scenes, kind of just refresh my memory of him a little bit. And yeah, he was just a bland and boring villain. That's his problem. He's not like poorly written or anything. He's just boring. There's nothing to him. There's nothing interesting about him. There's no depth, not even a little bit of depth. At least Whiplash might have some interesting dialogue here and there. I don't know. Malekith has nothing interesting to him. He was by far the worst part of Thor: The Dark World, and that movie as a whole is like the worst movie in the MCU, so, you know, the big part of that was that villain, of course. Now we have Bucky, the Winter Soldier. Of course, this is him as the Winter Soldier, so this is an interesting thing because I don't normally like these types of villains, the villains who are completely good people until they get brainwashed and then they become villainous, but because they do a lot of interesting things with him later on, with like the kind of trauma he has because of the things he did to other people, I think it makes up for him being a really damn good villain. And they do a lot of interesting things with this character, especially in Civil War. I know he was heroic in Civil War, not for the whole movie, but for most of it. But yeah, he was attacking people in Civil War, and I love what they do with him having killed Tony's parents, and the way that just unfolds in Civil War. It makes that, you know, such a great film. And him, Winter Soldier as well, is just incredible. Like, he is such an intriguing villain. You know, from the moment you see him, you're just like, I can't wait to see who this is, find out who this is, and then you find out who it is, and you're like, holy shit. And of course, how they end it in the Winter Soldier with him fighting him and him being like, you know, Captain America's telling him that he's not gonna kill him, he's not gonna fight him, he's not gonna do that. So if he wants to kill him, let him do it. And he kind of snaps out of it in that moment, and it was just a really beautiful moment. So I'm gonna put him in A. The only thing keep me at S is, again, that type of villain usually isn't my favorite type of villain, but the way they handle him, I just think was really, really damn good. Did I put him in A for the other one too, for the heroes? I think I did. So yeah, that probably makes sense then. Next up, Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm gonna put him in B. He doesn't have much depth, so that's the only thing keeping him down a bit, but I actually think he was really fun in this movie because, well, not fun, but he worked well in this movie because the Guardians of the Galaxy are such fun characters, right? They're such fun people, especially Star-Lord more than anyone, and of course, it's got a nice contrast. I love when movies do that, when they have a nice contrast with the villain from the hero. There's a huge contrast here because Ronan's this very serious guy who's just, you know, never cracking any jokes like a lot of MCU characters do, and I love that, how he's just completely serious, and then you contrast that with the Guardians who are just joking around, messing around the whole movie. So he works really well as a villain in that film. I don't really think you need him to have such an interesting personality for it to work. Some of these villains, it's like, when you compare them from just, you know, any movie, it's a little different, but when you compare the movies that they're in, it works differently. Like Ronan in any other movie, I don't think would work as well. If you had Ronan as a villain in, I don't know, a Captain America movie, I think he would be shit. But because he's in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, it works so damn well. So I just really think Ronan was a good villain. He's not, you know, anything that great crazy though, because he doesn't have too much depth to him, you know. Ultron. This one might be a little unpopular, but I'm gonna put him in A. I actually really like Ultron. Yes, there's a couple things I didn't love. I didn't think you needed to give him, any humor. You could have made him just as serious as Ronan. He could have been more menacing that way. I mean, Ultron in the comics, I've read only a little bit of the comics of Ultron. I haven't gone too crazy with it. He is very menacing there. Very, very menacing. And I think they nailed that in the trailers, but they didn't nail it as well as they could have in the movie. But he does have a very good presence to it. He's very threatening in this movie. Of course, his whole, Ultron bot army is really threatening. And I think the design of him is just so damn awesome. So that helps it as well a ton. It's just, yeah, if you made him a little bit more menacing like Thanos was and a little more serious, I think it would have worked a little bit better. But for what we got, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Next up, we have Yellow Jacket, and I don't know why, but I just really loved Ant-Man as a movie. The first one, not the second one as much. And Yellow Jacket was honestly a big part of it, but looking back on it, I don't think the villain was that great. I just think the design was so cool and just the way he looked and such, and obviously I just like the movie a lot. So I think I enjoyed him more back when it first came out, but as time went on, yeah, he is very cliche, which I don't think being cliche is bad. Generic cliche. I don't think it's a terrible thing to be, because that's just bound to happen. But there's a lot of interesting things. I'm gonna put him in B. He's not an A tier. He's definitely not S. I think B works well. He definitely is very formulaic as a villain. Like I said, he's just, all about power and money and all that stuff. It's not all that deep, but I still really enjoyed it. I think, like I said, the action sequences that you're able to do with Yellow Jacket, because it's an Ant-Man movie and because they go tiny and stuff, it's cool. It's cool. And that's definitely enough for me to at least give him a decent spot on this ranking. Next up, this guy, I can never say his damn name right. It's like Calicus or some shit. He is D tier easily. Like Doctor Strange, I enjoyed that movie because of Doctor Strange. I didn't give a living crap about any of the villains. Same with Dormammu. He's going in D as well. There's just nothing interesting about them at all. They were the parts of the movie that I found to be the weakest. And I just wanted to see Doctor Strange doing cool magic. But whenever these guys were involved, I just did not care. Their characters were just boring. Boring. Zemo. It's going to go in S, actually. So Zemo, I got his look from the Falcon, the Winter Soldier. He didn't do anything that interesting in that show. Oh, villainous side of him didn't do anything interesting in that show. He was fun in that show. I would prefer to see more of the villainous side of him, because I thought that was the thing about him that made him S tier in the Civil War. He was such a well-written character. He's so different than everyone else because he doesn't have superpowers. He's not crazy, fighting and stuff. He did some cool stuff in the Falcon Winter Soldier, but before that, he's just a normal guy who lost his family, and that turned him into someone who's very, extremist, because he just wants to get revenge against the Avengers for what happened to his family. And I think it was really, really well written, and that's the whole storyline of Civil War plays out because of Zemo, and I thought it was brilliant. It's again, I love Civil War, so that's definitely a big factor into why I think Zemo is such a great villain in the MCU. I hope we see a little bit more of him. I think we will, so I'm very excited for that. Ego from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. This is going to be S tier as well. That might be a shock to some people, because I know a lot of people who don't think Ego is a good villain. I love Ego, man. I'm a big fan of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as a whole, but Ego was such an interesting addition. Obviously, the actor is fantastic. We all know that. But seeing Star-Lord's father, Peter's father, after everything that happened in the first one, after he lost his mother, and then just getting introduced to his father out of nowhere, it was definitely jarring. And we get to learn a little bit about him. And at first, we're not too sure if he's, heroic or not. We're not too sure if he's good or not. We're just kind of going along with it. And slowly learning that this place is probably not safe was interesting. I liked how that mystery was unveiling itself. And then when he just finally gives out his entire plan and such to Peter, yes, it was kind of generic a little bit again, but it was done in a really good way, so it's okay. And when he reveals to Peter that what he did to his mother, that was really holy shit, this is a threatening guy, and he's powerful too. And the dialogue he has back and forth with Peter's really damn good too, so that helps. So yeah, back to back, these two villains are just So damn good. Ego is one of my favorites. Vulture, another S tier villain. Damn, these couple movies here, a lot of S tier villains. Vulture is one of the best Spider-Man villains ever as well, not just for MCU. He's one of the best Spider-Man villains because he's so different. Again, I like unique villains a lot. He's so different because he's not doing this for some big crazy, political gain or for power. He's literally just doing what he's doing to provide for his family. That's it. And that makes him very interesting. I like his look to him. I'm not letting Morbius get in the way of how I feel about his character, because yes, he's stupid in Morbius. The one thing they do with him in Morbius was just no, but we're talking about MCU here, so let's just no. Yeah, but he's great. I really enjoy him. Obviously, Michael Keaton's fantastic actor, and I'm hoping to see more of him. I guess we'll see him in the Sony movies somehow, but he's great. Hela. So Hela from Thor Ragnarok, I'm not on the same page as others. I think a lot of people like Hela a lot more than I do. And I mean, I don't even like Thor Ragnarok as much as other people do. I think it's good. I just don't think it's like, the best thing since sliced bread. So I'm going to put her in B. I think she's just in the same tier as these other dudes because she's just as interesting. I think she has cool moments. I just don't necessarily think her character brings me as much joy as these other ones do. I don't have much else to say though. Killmonger from Black Panther, I do think outshines T'Challa in Black Panther. I do think T'Challa, I think I talked about this in my other one, I think T'Challa was better in Civil War than he was in his own movie. Not in terms of the acting. Chadwick Boseman killed it, but it was more of the writing for the character, and they just didn't do as many interesting things with T'Challa in Black Panther as they did with Killmonger. And I think Killmonger was very well handled in this movie. I don't think he's S though, so I'm gonna put him in A. I don't think he's gonna be on S tier. Thanos though, yeah, we might as well just toss him up here. I mean, he's at the top regardless. I mean, I'm not really doing them in order on the thing, but I'm just gonna throw him there because Thanos is the best villain in the MCU by far, without a doubt. He's also one of the best villains in fiction ever, in my opinion. I know I haven't seen every single piece of fiction out there, but Thanos is fucking amazing, man. The way this character is written, yes, of course, people could, nitpick it all day. They could be like, oh, why doesn't he just create resources for the world? I don't fucking know, man. I don't fucking care. Well, to be honest, it could be a couple of different reasons, because he could just want the power of limiting the amount of people that could possibly cause some sort of, because he just wants peace. Like, that's his biggest thing, is peace. If he gives more resources, is that going to create peace? Not automatically. More resources could just cause, I mean, even in our world today, resources isn't entirely the issue. There is enough food for everyone in the world. There is, definitely. The issue is just how the different governments work and how countries, feel about each other, and laws and a lot of that crap, right? That's what gets in the way of the world and what makes people suffer, So more resources, I don't think would really fix that. You'd still have people fighting over stuff. You'd still have people who want more than others, and they would take it from people who need it. And I think Thanos knew that. And I think that's what made his character so interesting, is that his ideal was, let me just snap away 50% of the population, so there's less people to fight over things, and maybe people will come together and be peaceful. And he was kind of right. Not that it's a good thing to do, but that's what's so interesting, is that what he did kind of worked. Like, they were even talking about an Endgame. Steve was right, like, because there's less people, the rivers were clearing up. We saw like more fish or something like that. Like, his plan worked, and that makes him just so damn interesting. And he's so threatening. This is one of the most threatening motherfuckers out there. Like, he's a terrible person because he wants to, create a worldwide genocide, random genocide. But you still see it as a plan that makes sense. And that's a good villain, a villain that makes you don't feel bad for, you're not really sympathetic for, you're not rooting for them, but you understand what they're doing and why it actually makes sense. That's a well-written villain, and that's exactly what Thanos is. Mainly in Infinity War, I still like him a lot in Endgame. People say he was bad in Endgame because it was a different version. It was like an older version, or not really, a younger version. But I still think he was really solid in that as well. You know, it was just a younger version that was just more bloodthirsty, kind of. You know, he was just like, screw it, I'm just gonna blow up your whole entire planet and your whole universe and just create a new one or something. Like, I thought that was really cool. Ghost from Ant-Man the Wasp, I honestly just think was kind of bland, but she kind of looked cool, so she had a couple interesting moments. Yeah. This dude's name I kind of forget, was like Jan Rog or some shit. D. Captain Marvel's movie I already didn't like that much, but he was not interesting at all, not one bit, so that didn't help. Mysterio, kind of unpopular, but I was not crazy about Mysterio. I don't think he was a bad villain. I'm not gonna put him in S. I think some people would throw him pretty high up there. But out of most of the Spider-Man villains, he's on my lower end of the list. He definitely, again, he's another one of those I hate Tony Stark villains. I know even Vulture is, but I mean, when we got to Far From Home and seeing another one of those villains was just a bit much for me. I was like, all right, I've seen enough of that. But Jake Gyllenhaal did a great job, so that's what's keeping him out of being lower. And the idea of, you know, him using all these interesting what do you call it, illusions, I guess, it's cool. It's cool. I think Mysterio is better in the comics though, so I have read some of the Spider-Man comics with Mysterio. So Taskmaster from Black Widow, I'm gonna say D, actually. I think Taskmaster was very disappointing, and it's a couple of reasons. I think it's because she's not really a villain, you know. In the movie, she was, when you know Taskmaster, who originally was, you're expecting someone like that, right? And then when you get to it and it's just someone who's being manipulated and controlled by this other person, they're not really a villain anymore, right? They were really cool leading up to it. I guess they had a couple of cool scenes, and you know, the idea of this person using other heroes' abilities, the people they come across and stuff like that, right? I don't know exactly how that worked, but that was cool. Like, you know, you had a couple of Black Panther, like the claws, and then a couple of that stuff was interesting, but they didn't do enough with it. I feel they should have done way more, and I think they just shouldn't have made it a sympathetic character. I don't care that they made it a woman. I really don't. I think a lot of people were bitching about that, but I didn't really mind that. It was more about the fact that she was just not really a villain, you know? And they didn't do much with it after that, so I was pretty disappointed in that. Agatha Harkness, I think, was not that great, unfortunately. I know. People love her. Actress did a great job. I love the song that they had her do. She was cool in terms of her powers and stuff, but the character wasn't that interesting to me. I'm sorry, I just didn't find her as interesting. WandaVision as a show was great, a lot of great moments, but all about it was because of Wanda and Vision. It wasn't because of Agatha Harkness. And they're doing a whole spin-off show with Agatha, which I think is the biggest waste of time ever, but go ahead. Carly from The Falcon and the Winter Soldier is easily D tier, man. Oh my god, that was probably the worst part of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I talked about this a little bit in the last thing. I didn't think it was a terrible show. I just thought it was okay. But Carly was just so poorly written, because this is what they did with her, okay? She's got like somewhat sympathetic reasoning for what she's doing, but the sympathy goes out the window when you find that she's killing innocent people, right? That's how it should be for most normal people. And I don't mind letting that type of a character be sympathetic in some ways. I don't mind that at all. But the problem is when the story itself is written to try and make you feel bad for her and make you see her as not a villain. So much so that Sam Wilson goes out of his way to defend her and be very upset when she gets defeated in the end. Like, what? Like one of the worst scenes in that show was when someone called her a terrorist, and Sam Wilson was like, oh, don't call her a terrorist. Dude, she's the literal definition of a terrorist. She killed innocent people for political reasons. That is a terrorist. So I didn't like her. I didn't think she was a well-written villain. I think if you wanted to make her well-written, Don't have her kill innocent people. Have her maybe be a part of that extremist group, but maybe have her not specifically be leading the ones that are killing innocent people. And then maybe I'd feel bad for her. I'd be like, okay, she has been going through a lot of oppression and such, and that's why she was doing what she was doing, because she was kind of hoping to go back to that blipped world in between that time, because things were better. She thought things were better at that point, because she wasn't dealing with all the hardships of the world. And that could have been somewhat good of a villain, I think, but nah, man, they had her lead bombings of places and kill people. No, there's nothing sympathetic about her. I'm sorry, there just isn't. This next one's interesting. So this is Kang the Conqueror from Loki. Very hard to rank right now. I'm just gonna throw him in B, just because from his performance in Loki, he was great, but we haven't seen enough of him yet. We're gonna see more of him in Ant-Man 3, and he's probably gonna be the next Thanos. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think he seems like the next Thanos, but I think people who know about him from comics and such, he's probably going to be that big bad that we're going to see next for the next part of the MCU. We just haven't seen enough of him yet. He's definitely going to go up, I'm sure, but for now I'm going to put him in B, just out of the anticipation of what could come from his villain, and also, I mean, his performance in Loki was really cool. So I threw in one what if villain here because this was actually a really damn good villain and was really damn fun, and that's Infinity Ultron. I'm gonna throw him in A. It would be above Ultron, I would say. He was just so damn awesome. I mean, it wasn't like we had that much with him, so we couldn't like get a deep character growth or anything like that, but it was just how damn awesome he was in What If. He is the best part of What If by far. Dude, he took Thanos down with like one little slice of his body, and I don't know. I just thought he was really cool in What If, and that was the only part about What If that I thought was really all that worth it for me personally. I didn't like absolutely love What If as much as some other people did. I watched it on my own, by the way. I didn't do reactions to it, if you're wondering. Next up, we have Echo from the Hawkeye series. I'm gonna put her in B. I think she was good. There's gonna be a spin-off show with her, so I'm not sure if she's gonna be more heroic there, because she kind of changed towards the end. She was not like a terrible, awful villain, you know, in terms of like what kind of a person she was. It was more about revenge for most of it, to be honest, because of what happened to her father from what Hawkeye did as Ronin. So yeah, I thought she was cool. She had a couple fun fight scenes too. I don't really have much else to say about her. I don't think she's that much higher, but yeah. So we have Kingpin here. This one's kind of hard to rank because, like, I keep saying that I want to rank just the MCU version, but I feel like that's unfair to Kingpin to just rank his MCU version, because his MCU version, obviously, he didn't do much. He was there, he was cool to see, but I just have started, Daredevil a couple months ago. I'm only in episode 11 of season 1, but even just from that, I'm putting him in S. I don't care. I'm going to count his Daredevil version too, just because it's just too good not to. It's too good not to, man. He is one of the best villains in Marvel history. Like, I'd put him next to Thanos. So yeah, I'm throwing him up there for sure. Definitely. I'll just honestly put him in right there just to let you guys know where I'd put him. But yeah, just his Hawkeye version wouldn't be that high. His Hawkeye version would be like B or something, because I mean, he didn't do much in Hawkeye. Definitely not gonna pronounce this dude's name right. I'm just gonna call him Shang-Chi's father. Okay, because I can't pronounce his name. He was pretty damn awesome. I know I forgot Shang-Chi in the hero videos. I'm so sorry for that. I'm sorry. I was gonna put him in A, but I'm putting him in A for sure as well. He would go just alongside him. I thought he was actually a really good villain. They had a lot of cool scenes with him. I think that once the flashback scene where he just absolutely took out those dudes in that what was that restaurant, that was really cool. So he's definitely A. He was the best part of Shang-Chi. I would say even better than Shang-Chi himself. People talked about how stupid the big CGI monster was in that movie, the big dragon, because it's like, oh, it was such a good movie until then, because they just went to this, formulaic Marvel thing where you just get a big CGI monster. But himself as a villain was great. He was pretty great. So this is pretty even so far. We don't have too many in like one category. B is the only one that's like overflowing. Icarus from Eternals wasn't crazy about. I know he was hero for most of it, and then at the end it was like, oh, he's actually working for the big bad of the movie. And yeah, I mean, he's the only villain I'm really counting in that movie because he's the only one who really felt like he had a presence, whereas the other villain was just, I don't know, a big giant god thing. So I mean, I can't really rate that as a villain. But Icarus himself, I don't know. I'm not really always crazy about some of those twist villains where it's like, oh, he's a hero at first and then he becomes a villain later on. I guess I just didn't love the twist. I didn't think it was very organic. It didn't feel organic. I think there was definitely better ways to have gone about it, and I never really bought into his motives the way you should buy into a villain's motives, because again, you want to understand the villain's motives. You want to be able to not sympathize, but you want to be able to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And I didn't fully always understand why he's doing what he's doing. I didn't buy into it. Maybe I understood it, I just didn't buy into it. I was like, I don't think this guy would be doing this in this moment, to be honest. And it never really plays off all that well. It doesn't get good payoff from his motives. So yeah, I'm not crazy about him, but he's not D tier. He's not that bad. Norman Osborn, or the Green Goblin, just like Kingpin, I'm also going to include the Spider-Man 1 version because I think it's unfair to just include one part of the character. Sometimes, like I said, for Vulture, like I can forget about what happened in Morbius because that was whatever, but Green Goblin, you have to include his Spider-Man 1 version too, and that's easily in S tier. I'm just going to throw him all the way up here as well because he's that damn good. I know I said before I don't usually love the villains that are like the type that are normal at a baseline but then get like infected with something and then they're just completely different person. I usually don't love those villains. This is the one time where it's a fucking amazing villain. Like, because there is complexity in even Norman's character. It's not like Norman's just completely normal and it's just the Goblin. And the Goblin is a character in its own way. You know, it's not like the Winter Soldier where he's kind of just like completely brainwashed and there's like no part of Bucky there. Like, you kind of see him going back and forth between Norman and Green Goblin sometimes. And it's so damn interesting. It almost feels like, I want to say Moon Knight in a way, because it has that multiple personality thing to it, and I fucking love it. And Norman Osborn, Willem Dafoe is just so damn good in this, and especially in No Way Home, he's so damn good. I mean, he's even, I don't know if is he better in Spider-Man 1? I don't know. They're pretty close, but he's such a good villain. Doc Ock is also going to go up here, but I honestly didn't love him in No Way Home as much as I was hoping. They didn't really do much with him there, but doesn't change the fact that from Spider-Man 2, he was incredible. Again, kind of similar to where it's something that changes him. It's technology really changing him. But again, Doc Ock is like a character in its own way, separate from Otto Octavius. And again, it's an incredible character. So even though that's the type of story that I don't usually say I like, it works so well with these two characters. It works well with Winter Soldier too, but I think it works extremely well with these two. So they're definitely going up there. Electro, I honestly didn't love in Spider-Man No Way Home. I actually thought he was a little underwhelming because he was so different than he was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I actually liked him in Amazing Spider-Man 2 a little bit more, weirdly enough. Felt like a completely different person. I want to say B tier for him, because I do like his character in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 a lot. I do. It's just No Way Home didn't do much more with him that I thought was all that great. I'll put him in B. I think B sounds good. I don't have the other No Way Home villains because they didn't do shit. I don't know. I know I could have talked about Sandman from Spider-Man 3 or Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man 1. If I were to, they'd probably both be like, I think Sandman would be an A, Lizard would be in B. So if you really wanted to hear me talk about those guys, there you go. But next up, Harrow from Moon Knight. Again, I know I forgot Moon Knight in the other video. He would have been A tier. I wasn't crazy about Harrow. And the thing is, I really like Ethan Hawke. I think he's a fantastic actor, but I was not crazy about him. He felt very bland, and that was unfortunate, again, because I absolutely love Ethan Hawke, and I was really looking forward to a standout performance, and he gave a standout performance. It's just the villain wasn't that interesting. I think that most interesting part of Moon Knight was Moon Knight was the dynamic between Steve and Mark. Steven and Mark. That's what was so good about the show. But him, I wasn't on board completely, unfortunately. Even towards the end, it got a little bit weird. And he had this interesting ideology about life that was very different than, like, Khonshu and such. And I do like their conversations, the stuff he talks to Khonshu a little bit here and there, a couple scenes. And, there's a lot of philosophical stuff about his character I liked, but I can't get into it completely, is what I'm trying to say. Wanda from Doctor Strange 2 is S tier as well. She'd be up pretty high too. She's one of the best MCU villains for sure. Just absolutely loved her in Doctor Strange 2. I know she wasn't really a villain before that, maybe a little bit in WandaVision, but she was just completely unleashed in Doctor Strange 2, and she was so damn good. She was a horror icon, pretty much. I mean, it was just so damn good. It was honestly better than her heroic self. I liked her as a villain more than a hero, even though her heroic self I love as well. But her as a villain was just so damn good. This is a stacked S tier right here. People say MCU doesn't have any good villains. I think they got a decent amount. Obviously, Kingpin and these three right here aren't really MCU. They were in little bits of it, but even then, the others, there's a lot of good MCU villains in my opinion. So this is my ranking. Let me know your guys' list in the comment section below. Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with? I will see you on my next one. Let me know if you want to see other rankings of characters, of villains, of whatever. If you want me to do X-Men, if you want me to do DC, I don't know. We can maybe think of something else. But for now, MCU, here it is. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.